Welcome to Deep South Dining right here on MPB Think Radio. Malcolm White, Carol Palmer in a tiara this morning. Carol?
Indeed.
Looking very festive.
Getting ready for Mardi Gras, Mal.
Yes, you are. Got on. Let's stand up and let's see all the beadery. You got.
These are some of my good big beads. You know, from the parades gone by.
Very nice.
And this is really just a travel crown.
Travel crown.
It's very discreet and always in style. You can wear it anywhere.
Good. Well, good deal. Well, everything, we're all set up here. We're beautifully decorated in the studio, and you may be wondering why if you're listening only to the radio, and that's because we are streaming on YouTube, which we do, Marissa, every week. And I guess people can do what in order to see Carol this morning?
Absolutely. You can go to YouTube, search Deep South Dining, search MPB online, however you like, and it should pop up for you. But we're here and we're decorated and we're ready for y'all to come watch.
You know, Marissa, the thing that's concerning me is that I have a crown in beads. Malcolm's Mardi Gras is on his feet.
Oh, yeah.
So can we do...
That's right.
So get a shot of those kicks.
How about those green shoes?
I got these for Christmas. They're for the St. Patty's Parade, but they're also Mardi Gras colors. So I thought, why not? Today would be a great day to break in the new kicks. Java liked them.
Yeah,
Java,
they're very cool.
It's the first thing he noticed when I walked in the building. All right, so today is Monday, the 24th day of February. Today is my daughter's birthday. So happy birthday to Zeta Mallory. She's away in Washington State visiting with friends. She'll be coming home tomorrow, so we'll have a great celebration. So very special day for us. And, Mardi Gras is March 4, so it's right around the corner.
On the countdown, there are parades every day right now in New Orleans.
So we wanted to sort of have the last word on king cakes. We've talked a lot about king cakes this year, more so than ever before, no doubt. But it's such a deep reservoir of info and goings on out there. Today we have... We'll have two guests. Matt Haines is with us, the guy who wrote the big book of Mardi Gras king cakes.
And the little book of king cakes.
Also has a children's book of king cakes. He's out of New Orleans, and he and I were on a panel. Carol, you remember the homegrown panel?
Indeed.
You hosted last year, and I hosted this year. And Matt and I had an hour-and-a-half conversation about his book and his work, and it was really great, and I told him, I said, I'm going to call you. I'm going to invite you on the radio show. So Matt's going to be on.
A guy who has 368 pages of king cakes, you've got to respect that. Absolutely.
Also, Sherri, Paul, Thigpen will be calling in from Paul's Bakery down in Picayune, Mississippi. They have been so kind. They have sent us a bouquet of king cakes. I think 9, if I'm not mistaken. So we've got king cake running out of our ears this morning. So we'll be tasting and sampling and sharing and talking about all things king cake.
You know, the Paul family, Malcolm, in that part of the country, and we both have Past Christian and Bay St. Louis roots. I mean, that's real royalty.
Yeah, they've been around since 1970,
yes,
I believe.
It's a great story. Can't wait to talk about it.
Absolutely. So Sherri will be calling in. But in the news, Carol, I don't know if you noticed, Clarion Ledger had a story that Ross Riley wrote about the Glenn family. There was some rumors going around that the Fondren location of the ever-popular Roosters restaurant was closing, and it's just not true. It turns out
fake news.
Fake news. They were doing some renovations, and they were closed down for a while to do some work. And when they reopened for lunch, but they did not reopen for dinner, and so it threw a lot of people off. But now they're back open.
You just can't fool the people,
the public
like that.
You got to watch them. Now they're back open for lunch and dinner in that location. And I popped in to the Basil's location in Fondren on Saturday as my granddaughter was next door at the Bean selling Girl Scout cookies. she and I walked over into the Fondren building, and there was Tim Glenn, who is the father of Nathan, who now runs the operation. Tim was in the restaurant in the Basil's, not in the Roosters Inn, but in the Basil's Inn. And he was in there with his daughter and his granddaughter prepping to open for lunch.
Love it.
Talk about a family business.
Family business.
And I had the occasion to speak to Glenn and to remind him how much I appreciated how he helped us out back in 1984, 85 when we were building Hal and Mal's. He hired Hal to cook in his restaurant out on Highway 80. Coincidentally, the name of the restaurant was Paul's. You remember Paul's on Highway 80?
Of course I do.
So Hal worked with the Glenn family out there before we opened Hal and Mal's. And then they opened Roosters downtown on Roach Street, right across from the Mayflower. And Tim reminded me that they were down there cooking these hamburgers and not doing much business until we published an article in the Diddy Wah Diddy. He said it set his business in motion.
Well, for those who are not familiar with the Diddy Wah Diddy, what a great period in Jackson that you, Malcolm, published the Diddy. It's one of your many endeavors, many of your love letters to your community.
So
Could you do it again?
What's that?
Publish the Diddy.
Did I do it again?
I said, could you do it again?
Oh, no. Of course not. Want to remind people that the Glenn family has a Roosters and Basil's combo now open off of Airport Row in Flowood. They are open at the Renaissance in Ridgeland. As
Expansion.
You know. Expansion. They're very busy people. And in this article I read, it said that they've opened up like 18 restaurants throughout their careers. That's a lot of restaurants. But anyway, shout out to the Glenns, and thank you for all the good work you do, and congratulations. And reminding people that the Roosters in the Fondren building is wide open.
It is wide open and ready for business. And Malcolm, I love how Marissa gives us every week what the food-related holidays, everybody has their day.
They do.
There's one that speaks to me this week.
Okay.
It is National Chocolate-Covered Nut Day on February 25th.
Chocolate-covered nut day.
Yes,
Okay.
and I'm thinking about that because ever since we had Emmy King from Nandy's on, I have been craving chocolate. In fact,
Wow.
I made my third visit to Nandy's Candies. Hadn't been in a long time, stopped after the show and bought Valentine's candy for my husband. It didn't quite make it to Valentine's Day from Monday to Friday. Had to go back. And then last week, I went back and got yet another Valentine box
Okay.
for him. And
Well-
it had many chocolate-covered nuts.
A lot of chocolate. Well, I also went to Nandy's after having Emmy on the show. Took my granddaughter to pick out her Valentine box. And so there you go. That's how it works, right?
Well, when I went in, they had like hundreds stacked up of Valentine boxes.
Unbelievable.
And I thought last Monday after Valentine's, I could just walk in and pick up one,
Yeah.
and be done with it and give John yet another Valentine. But no, they were out.
Gone.
Yes.
Gone. They'll
So
have
I'm
to-
carrying around my Valentine
They'll have
box,
to
and I'm going to
replenish.
keep getting it refilled.
Okay, great. So we're going to take a quick break so we can get into the meat of the king cake business. When we come back, we will be joined by Matt Haines, the author of the Big Book of King Cakes and the Little Book of King Cakes. Also calling in a little bit later in the show, Sherri Paul Thigpen from Paul's Bakery in Picayune, Mississippi. Carol, do you know what a Picayune is?
What's a
It's a
cigarette?
coin. No, it's a coin. Yeah. So anyway, that's it for trivia on Deep South Dining. We'll be right back with the real show. So join us when we
Okay.
return.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Bobby Rush. As a blues man, I love Mississippi Public Broadcasting. If you support Mississippi music and their local programming, Donate now, right now, and become a member today, not tomorrow. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Doesn't matter how big or small, but we prefer big. Thank you very much.
For this moment in Black history, Robin Roberts was born in Tuskegee, Alabama in 1960 and moved to Pass Christian, Mississippi when she was 8 years old. In 1983, she began her career as a sports reporter at WDAM-TV in Hattiesburg. And in 1990, she made history as the first Black female on-air sportscaster at ESPN. Roberts' mother was the first African American to lead Mississippi's Board of Education, and father was a World War II Tuskegee Airman. This has been a moment in Black history.
Hello, I'm Desiree Frazier, host of the award-winning news program, Mississippi Edition. We bring you conversations about the latest news from across the Magnolia State. Whether it's politics, healthcare, or education, you'll hear in-depth discussions on issues that matter to you. So join us each weekday morning at 8:30 on MPB Think Radio, or download the podcast, listen through the app, and online.
Welcome back to Deep South Dining right here on MPB Think Radio. Malcolm White, Carol Palmer, dressed to kill over here with a tiara
And got king cake
lots
all
of
around.
beatery. We are excited about the Mardi Gras season and about king cakes. You know, I will tell you, Carol, never been a huge fan of the king cake. I've eaten them all my life, never thought much about them. Thought they were mostly a New Orleans thing, and lo and behold, we got an email after last week's show from Carol Hendricks, who says, Dear all, I wasn't able to tune in on Monday, but just FYI about Mardi Gras, I'm a lifelong Memphian, and we definitely celebrate the Mardi Gras. King cakes are readily available in most grocery stores, either shipped in from New Orleans or made by local bakeries. Also, most of the lovely independent bakeries here in town serve up their own version of the king cake. Some are very, very cool. So we were saying it had reached to the coast. It had made it to Hattiesburg and
then Jackson.
We heard
with
it was
Jeff Good.
We heard it was in Oxford at the Bottle Tree, and lo and behold, it's in Memphis. But
you just never know now.
we do know one thing, that there's a guy who knows everything there is to know about king cakes, and he's joining us now. My friend Matt Haines. Hello, Matt. How are you, buddy?
Hey, I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
We're
great.
good.
So Matt and I had an hour-and-a-half conversation at the little book festival known as Homegrown down in Long Beach, Mississippi, and I was fascinated by his story. So Matt, if you would, tell us how you got in the king cake business, as it were. I think there's a girl involved.
Yep. And so, I'm a New Yorker originally, which always makes people gasp. Why would this New Yorker make a book about king cake? But I moved to New Orleans in 2009 and didn't know too much about what king cake was. I'd see it on the parade route and didn't think too much of it. And then any good story starts with heartbreak. And so in 2017, a relationship ended, and I had some time to fill. I know. And I also happened to be invited to a king cake party. Maybe my friend felt bad for me, what I was going through.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, what in the world is a king cake party? Okay, so she tells me there's going to be 40 people at the party. Everyone's responsible for bringing their favorite king cake. And I said, great, but I don't know what my favorite king cake is. So I take to Google, and I look up best king cakes New Orleans, and I find a top 10 list, and I'm like, great, okay, I'm going to take those 10 king cakes, put them on my spreadsheet, I'll try them all, rate them, and then I'll bring the best one. But just before I got started, I saw below that top 10 list was another top 25 list. Took a look at that. Very few of those 25 were on that top 10 list. Put those on the spreadsheet too. Then I found another spreadsheet. Pretty soon my king cake list had more than 130 king cakes on it to try. And I didn't try all of them, but I tried 88 that year. So that was kind of my intro to king cake.
That's strong. That was really strong.
And somewhere along the way, you took a walk on a trail
Yeah,
somewhere.
shortly thereafter that, I, still trying to kind of, turns out trying 88 king cakes was not the solution to my love woes. And so I ended up going on an Appalachian trail hike. It was Georgia to Maine. It's a 6-week hike or 6-month hike, sorry. And so this would be irrelevant to my king cake story, except that everybody gets a trail nickname. And so rather than people calling me Matt for 6 months, they called me by my trail name, which was King Cake. And so
I like it. It took you all those states in 6 months to walk off the 80 king cakes.
It's crazy. I was only eating king cake during those 88 cakes, and so I actually lost a couple of pounds.
No.
I was not nutritionally sound at all, but I was somehow losing weight. I think calorically I was okay. And so then after the hike, I kind of did some writing just about the hike while I was doing it. Decided I was going to try to be a writer when I got back to New Orleans, and did a lot of food writing. And every time Carnival season came around, I just noticed those king cake articles. I knew a whole lot about king cake at that point. They did really well. And so eventually I looked to see if anybody had written a book about king cake, and nobody had. And that's how the big book of king cake came about.
And such is the birth of this guy here on the table.
It is the big book of king cake.
Now, in the book, you go back and survey the history of the king cake. You bring it up to modern times, and in the book you feature, I believe, 75 cakes from New Orleans. But you said it could have been, you could have had 150 perhaps if you'd have wanted to expand it.
Yeah, exactly. There's 75 different. It's kind of the stories of 75 different New Orleans area bakeries. A lot of photos and the stories behind each of their unique king cakes. So what I kind of was surprised to find out is that every single baker's personal story, whether that's their Honduran, so they had some Honduran elements in their king cake, or one woman couldn't figure out how to make the dough she wanted to use bend, but she was a seamstress previously. And so all of these incredible stories are woven into the king cakes they make. And like you said, I picked 75 because it somebody was telling me I should, my publisher was like, well, maybe we stop at 50. I was like, I don't know. 50 sounds like a number that I recognize what that is. 75 kind of feels like we're getting closer to infinity.
Yeah.
So we went with that. But yeah, I could have probably find 250 people in New Orleans who are making king cakes to try.
Well, I find the whole thing about the immigrant bakeries making the king cake so fascinating. And I wanted to know if you could speak to the Vietnamese bakeries that are doing this.
Yeah, sure. And just to kind of more broadly, before we get into the Vietnamese specifically, it's kind of an amazing thing because I think I assume it's pretty similar in Mississippi. In New Orleans, people get pretty defensive about their food traditions, but for some reason around king cake, there's I don't know, some people are very much Mackenzie's was a very popular king cake in New Orleans. So a king cake like that is unfilled, purple, green, and gold sugar. That's the traditional king cake of the 20th century. That's what a lot of people grew up eating. They don't want any diversion from that. But then there's a whole lot of people in New Orleans who are open to all of these different varieties as well, especially when they have a nice story. And so I don't know if you guys have had Dong Phang king cake.
Yep.
It's kind of the most popular one in New Orleans at this point, kind of challenges Randazzo's for popularity. And Dong Phang, for a while, I think some people were like, oh, that's not really a king cake. And now it's kind of becoming accepted. And they make thousands and thousands that they sell out of every single day. But it's an amazing that their story leading to that's unbelievable. They were from Vietnam during the Vietnam War. And a woman, Miss Hoang Tran, is the founder of the bakery. Back in the late 1970s, the war's going on. Her husband's a fighter pilot, gets shot down during a battle. He survives, but ends up in a prisoner camp. He manages eventually to escape the camp, get back to his wife Hoang and their 2 kids, and says, "Hey, we have a little money saved away. Let's buy passage on a boat and let's get out of here." So they do, and they go to Burma. On their way to Burma, pirates board the ship, steal everything from all the passengers. The Tran family, so it's Hoang and Dee Tran with their 2 kids. The Tran family now has nothing left. They end up in Burma, and they beg their way into a refugee camp where they sit for a year, unsure of what to do next, a full year. Fortunately, late 1970s, this very small Vietnamese community that's kind of popped up from refugees of the war in New Orleans. One of their friends from Vietnam had made his way there. And so he was able to sponsor the Tran family from Burma to come over to New Orleans. So they get back on a boat, they come to New Orleans, they arrive in the very end of the 1970s. Huang was a seamstress back in Vietnam. And so she tries to do a little bit of sewing work with the Vietnamese community to make a little bit of money. Not able to save very much doing that. She then transitions to, okay, maybe I'll try to do some baking. Her mother owned a coffee shop with a little bakery. She is able to save a little money doing that. She pools that with money with her extended family, starts to arrive in New Orleans as well. They save enough money to buy a bakery. Okay, so this is 1982 now. They buy a bakery, and for the next 20 years or so, the bakery starts off gaining popularity in the Vietnamese community. Eventually, non-Vietnamese people start to discover it as well. For the next 20 years, the bakery's growing. They're winning awards, but they have no interest in making king cake because it's not their tradition. Till after Hurricane Katrina, Miss Tran, so Huang says, her grandkids are going to school now with non-Vietnamese New Orleanians. And so they cannot avoid the king cake tradition. It's there in the classroom. Every Friday, kids are eating a king cake. Whoever gets the baby has to bring the next king cake. And those non-Vietnamese New Orleanians, they would get the baby, and then they would go to bakeries like Gambino's or Randazzo's or Haydel's, really big name bakeries that all the other kids were excited to try that cake on Friday. But when Huang's grandkids would get the baby, she said there was no place for them to really get a king cake in New Orleans East where their community was. And so they end up on the way to school just having to pick up like a generic brand king cake. And it was not as well received as the better, the bigger name king cakes. And so the kids felt embarrassed. Huang felt embarrassed for them, but she felt, what? I am positioned to be able to fix this problem. What if we tried to make a king cake? What would a Vietnamese king cake look like? And she took their most popular product, their brioche dough, and she said she was trying to get it to bend into a circle, but it really wasn't bending the way she wanted without breaking or distorting. And then she remembered as a seamstress, she could cut slices into fabric to make the fabric bend. And so she did the same thing with the dough. And, kind of like a defining physical characteristic of a Dongfang king cake is it has these like ridges on the outside. That's a result of her being a seamstress and applying that to making the dough curvilinear. And then finally, the cream cheese on the top of the king cake. She's like, Vietnamese people, we don't like this like sweet sugar, super sugary icing that a lot of Americans like. Well, we have this cream cheese filling in a lot of our products. Why don't we put that on top of the king cake? And so they ended up with now this small, super humble, left war-torn refugee family ended up creating through their own story the most popular king cake in New Orleans now.
Wow.
Wow,
There you
what
have
a
it.
great story.
And let's get another person into the studio. We have Sherri Paul Thigpen on the phone from Paul's Bakery, and they have a family story about how they got into king cake business. Hello, Sherri. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for all of the goodies.
Oh, you are so welcome. And listen, this has been wonderful to hear all these stories with the different bakeries. It's just amazing. You've done an amazing job with this book, and it's so interesting to hear all the different stories. And I guess just, like some of those folks, we have our own story as well. We're located here in South Mississippi. We moved here from California back in 1964 with the space industry. My dad worked with Rocketdyne. And my mom always made us birthday cakes for our birthdays growing up just at our home. And in 1970, a little 800 square foot bakery came up for sale, and my dad borrowed $3,500 from my grandpa, and we were now in the American dream of owning our own business and committed to work hard the rest of our lives.
That's great. I could envision seeing you guys in the Woody. They traveled from Santa Monica, I believe it was, to Picayune for this job. 3 kids, a cat, mom and dad, traipsing across the United States in a Woody on their way to Picayune for this new beginning. And not only, I guess, did your dad have a new career, was it at Stennis? Is that right?
Yes, it's Stennis.
But you guys decided, or your mom decided, or mom and dad decided to open a bakery and see what happens. And here you are, all these many years later, with one of the most popular king cakes in the state, and certainly around the Mississippi Gulf Coast. Paul's
really
is
defined the
iconic
king cake in Mississippi. I mean, that was what a king cake was for me for many years. And I remember I grew up, Sherri, in Past Christian, into high school there. But Stennis brought so many wonderful people to the Mississippi Gulf Coast and made such an impact on all of our lives and the businesses of the region. And I had no idea that your family was a space family.
That's right.
Behind the famous bakery.
Right. Well, Sherri, if you've not met, I would like for you to meet Matt Haines, the guy who wrote the book here. And you two ought to, at some point, connect when you get through Mardi Gras, if you can both survive it, and get to know each other.
I would love to. Almost every time I meet somebody from Mississippi, they talk about Paul. So it's a pleasure to meet them.
Well, y'all were really known, and are known for shipping king cakes all over, everywhere. So that's one of your niches. So tell us about that.
Well, we actually, in 1970, and Matt may know different. As far as we know, we have trademarks. We are the home of the original cream cheese filled king cake. Now, filled, from the inside. Our dough is a little different. It's more like a sweetbread dough, not a brioche or the regular Danish dough that so many bakeries are popular with. And in 1972, actually, my mom and it's because of Stennis that people would start asking us to make king cakes. And my mom, she always had this thing where the innovative bakers, we're not going to copy anything. We just want to kind of come up with our own ideas, just like the mom at Domfon. I mean, it's amazing. And so we came up with a sweet bread recipe that could hold the filling inside the king cake. And we started out with cream cheese king cakes. As far as we know, we were the first one to fill them the way that we did. Back in 1972, we made a lot of different fruit-flavored cakes, strawberry, lemon, pineapple, orange pineapple. And so we decided, we wanted to make the king cakes different flavors. And I think that it made people be creative, because at first we got the same, response. And look, we know the Haydales and the Randazzos, and we have friends all over the United States in the bakery industry, and we all want each other to make great king cakes, great bakery products, because it only does the industry, not in a good way if somebody's making something that doesn't taste good. But it all gives us our own little, niche of having our own kind of king cake. And when we first started filling them, we got the same kind of response. That's not really a king cake. Well, we just wanted to do something a little different than just cinnamon. And so we started filling them, and we got more requests. And like you said, Stennis really was a stepping stone, because there were so many people that were taking them from Picayune. My dad still worked at Stennis at this time, but there were so many people working from our area that would take our king cakes to Stennis. And then, of course, people there from Slidell, Louisiana, the Gulf Coast, would taste them, and it kind of spiderwebs from that direction. As far as the shipping goes, we were the first baker in Mississippi to make king cakes and to start shipping the king cakes and to wholesale king cakes, actually. We've been wholesaling king cakes since the early 80s. And but the shipping, we've become UPS's number one shipper in the state from December through February this year, all the way to March.
That's strong.
And so we just continue to work. We try to come up with new ideas. I sent y'all some of the new flavors: the raspberry amaretto, the red velvet, the Italian cream cheese, some of these different flavors that we have. And I love to see all the different bakeries in Mississippi and Louisiana coming up with new different flavors. It's kind of unleashed the thought of, once you start being creative, just like Matt can tell you, I'm sure, with his book, you become more creative, and it just never ends. It's amazing.
Well, this morning we are sampling out of this wonderful array, the pecan praline and we just cut
Red
a
velvet.
piece of the red velvet, which I had never heard of a red velvet king cake. Matt, have you run into one in your work?
Yeah, I sure have. I mean, like Sherri was saying, I love that there's all this creativity around king cake. I also love that there's traditionalists who say there's still people out there who say, well, that's not a king cake. You can't have a red velvet king cake.
Right.
Because I think that if we're only evolving, then the tradition kind of gets lost, whether it's the way the cake looks or the time of year we eat it. So I love that there's people kind of putting the brakes on it a little bit, and I love that there's people pushing it. And I think with those two things, we get this amazing, tradition that also doesn't live just in like a time capsule or becomes Disneyfied. So I think,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Matt, I wonder if you would share the Cliff Note history of the king cake. I was fascinated that it goes back to Roman times. I know you did a lot of research, and it's all in the book. So can you share a little bit of that with us?
Yeah, sure. And definitely steer me if I have a tough time with Cliff Note things. So steer me. But
Carol just got the baby.
I just got the baby from the red velvet king cake.
Oh, amazing.
Looks like the party's on her now.
I thought I had lost a tooth. Sorry, Matt.
No, Queen Carol. You don't have to apologize.
She's
at all.
got on the tiara already. So
Yeah, you win, and then my next king cake's coming from you, so I can't do that. Okay, so king cake tradition started back in ancient Rome with their Saturnalia festival, and Saturnalia was right around the winter solstice, December 21st, and they were basically celebrating. Long story short, that for months before that, the sun was getting. Nights were getting longer, days were getting shorter, sun was getting lower in the sky each day at its apex. They perceived that as the sun was dying in its battle against the winter spirits. After December 21st, it is the return of the sun, S-U-N. And so the sun is coming back, the days are getting longer. And so this was something worth celebrating because it meant, spring's still a whiles away, but maybe the worst is behind us. And so they celebrated the victory of the sun with by eating too much, by drinking too much, by wearing colorful costumes, by parading in the streets, taking 2 weeks off of whatever kind of work they were doing. And it sounds a whole lot like our Mardi Gras. They didn't have Mardi Gras. It was their Saturnalia festival, the biggest celebration of their year. In the middle of their feast, they would have a circular cake. It was circular like the sun and golden like the sun. And inside that cake was a little fava bean. And whoever got the slice of king cake with the fava bean, just like Carol just got the baby and the king cake, they were crowned king or queen of the Saturnalia festival. However, while Carol has to bring the next king cake, that was not the case for those Romans. Rather, they were sacrificed to the gods.
Oh, ouch.
Yeah, it could be much worse, Carol. You're getting off easy. And eventually, king cake. So that's the Saturnalia cake. The Romans, when they spread out all across Europe and the Roman Empire, from Bulgaria in the east to the British Isles in the west, they brought this tradition, all their traditions with them, this king cake tradition as well. Eventually, Roman Empire collapses. Christianity kind of takes up the mantle over the course of some time. And they are trying to convert these pagans to Christianity. And they decide to do that smartly by merging those pagan traditions and customs with those early Christian ones as well. And so the Saturnalia festival was around December 21st. The birth of Christ, they believed to be around December 25th. So they merged those things together on the 12th night of Christmas, when the Christians believed that the three kings found baby Jesus. That's when that Saturnalia cake was placed on the 12th night of Christmas as a tradition. They didn't like those pagan customs of the sun or fertility or whatever the Romans believed. They wanted it to be about the three kings. And so they turned it from that sun-shaped cake to a ring-shaped cake that some historians believe is meant to emulate a crown with colorful fruit on top. And they called it a three kings cake, which eventually became a king's cake and eventually became a king cake. And that's what the French brought to New Orleans in the late 1700s.
There you go.
Malcolm, I'm just, that's a lot.
It is a lot. It's good stuff.
I know we
though.
learned such good stuff here on Deep South Dining, and I wanted to say, Sherri, too, your king cake season, I think, is pretty long. I know that for many years I have gotten a king cake for Christmas early in December. So I was wondering, what exactly is your season?
Well, Actually, we do make king cakes all year. There's so many of our customers that think, if you've not been to our bakery, we'd love to invite y'all to come and see us. We have a full retail bakery. But because of the king cakes, there's so many people that just think we make king cakes and that's it. And we ship quite a few during the year for birthdays, anniversaries. We've done a lot for that. We've even shipped them overseas to the military troops. We've done a lot for different occasions. And, of course, Christmas, it kind of, backed up a bit. People wanted them for Christmas gifts before Mardi Gras season started. So we just tried to do what the customers were asking for, and that's kind of how we've come into what we do now. You can pretty much come into our bakery any day of the week that we're open, and we do make king cakes every day. And this, of course, it's not on the scale that we are right now, but we do have some every day. And people in our community are just used to being able to come and get one when they want it. So
Now, Sherri, you built the big new store on the hill, what, in 2003?
2006.
If I'm not mistaken, I once made a talk there. Did you have like a little side room where the Kiwanis Club or Rotary or something meets? Okay.
Yeah.
I came there once and made a talk to this group and got a tour. You or someone there gave me a tour of the kitchen and all of the facilities. It was really quite extensive.
Yes. I know a lot of folks think they're just going to come into a little bakery, and we traveled all over the United States. I was on the board of directors for the National Retail Bakers Association, and also belonging to another national group that a lot of the larger bakeries belong to in Chicago and New York and New Jersey, Los Angeles. We traveled all over the country just to see different bakeries and how they operated, and everybody just shared ideas. And so my husband and I, when we were trying to build a destination bakery and business on the interstate intersection, and that was our goal. And so when we traveled all over, we tried to look at different things that we liked at each place and tried to bring that back to Picayune. And we did have a lot of people, that we're in Picayune. It's a small community. The county, is not heavily populated, but we are so close to, we're 45 minutes from New Orleans, the same distance from the Mississippi Gulf Coast. We have so much traffic on I-59 that we felt like we could be successful in this location in the community that we both grew up in. And we just wanted to bring something, to our town that we were seeing in other big places. And so that was in 2006. 2025 will be our 55th year anniversary.
Unbelievable.
3 generations, right, of the family now in the bakery?
The 4th generation is working there. Started this year. Yeah, he got out of college, and he started working. His dad is our production manager, my son-in-law. My daughter is our office manager. Couldn't do it without either one of them. And then my grandson, my oldest grandson, just started with us this past year.
Wow.
And my first great-grandbaby was born this year, too. So.
Oh, my goodness.
Keep those king cake family members coming,
I loved the fact sheet you sent us comparing
cool.
1970 to 2025. And in 1970, you were 850 square feet, and today, 10,600.
Yes. And 3 employees in 1970 and 35 or 40 plus now. So it's been quite a growth. Now, you have menu items beyond the bakery. You serve like breakfast and lunch, correct?
Yes. Yeah, we wanted to have a cafe. We've got you've been in there, so you've seen we've got kind of the black wrought iron, trying to keep the New Orleans type atmosphere. And but we serve lunch every day from 11 a.m. until 2 p.m. And today is Monday, and we're usually closed on Mondays during the year, but during Mardi Gras we're open. And today, of course, we've got red beans and rice and sausage, cornbread.
Oh yeah.
And we have regular menus. I mean, we have regular items every day: salads and po' boys, sandwiches, shrimp baskets, all of that. Wednesdays we have filet mignon wrapped with applewood bacon. We have a red fish sauce on Thursdays. So we have a special each day, but of course, regular. We have our gumbo and corn and crab bisque. All of that's made from scratch. I want our chef to. I don't want anything to come in that's pre-made. Everything's made fresh with fresh ingredients every day.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Matt, talking about savory foods, your next endeavor, I do believe, my brother, is a book of po' boys. Is that right?
Yep, the Big Book of Po' Boy. I'm right before I signed on, I was writing it. So, middle photo shoots right now. Same thing. It'll feature 75 different po' boy makers and the stories behind each of their po' boys, and it'll be a whole lot of. Right now, I'm doing a lot of po' boy research. It's an incredible history behind that as well.
And you're eating a lot of bread. Now the Cliff Notes story of the po' boy is when the streetcars were on strike, and is that the same story you're finding to be the birth of this?
Yeah, so far like that seems to be a defining moment when the streetcar workers were on strike in 1929 at the start of the Great Depression, and these two guys who used to be in the union, who now owned a little restaurant in the French Market, they offered to give free food to any of the striking workers. And so anytime one of those striking workers would make their way to take those brothers up, the Clovis brothers up on this, or I'm sorry, the Martin brothers up on this offer, one of those brothers would say, hey, another po' boy is on the way. A poor boy is coming. So one of those guys that give him a sandwich is the way that the story went. But of course, there are things that looked suspiciously like a po' boy that just weren't called a po' boy before that. And so that's kind of what I'm having fun looking into now, is trying to push back further and further to see where this food item wasn't just invented at that moment.
Right.
So kind of how it evolved.
An evolution, yeah. Yep.
Exactly right. So that's been fun to look into.
So the photographs in the king cake book were just incredible. And I wanted you to speak a little bit about the photographer on that book.
Yeah, when I started doing the book, I didn't know the first thing about making a book. And I knew that I needed to hire a photographer. And so I looked at every single one that I could find in the region and kind of went back to creating a spreadsheet and got it down to 5, did interviews with them. And Randy Kraus-Schmidt, a local, New Orleanian, he's from just outside of New Orleans where he's born. He's lived in Louisiana his whole life. And he's been fantastic. So he and I go to every single 75 king cake photo shoots we went to together, and now we're in the middle of going to 75 po' boy photo shoots together. And it's really fun to he's so, taking photos of a po' boy. A po' boy is not naturally beautiful sometimes like a king cake is.
Yeah.
And so we have had to learn a lot together on the way, and he is so good at kind of every photo shoot. He's picking up something new in a new and creative way. We don't want these books to be redundant. We want to find new and interesting ways to shoot them that also reflect the story of the baker or the po' boy maker, and he's really great at that.
Yeah. And we have about 8 minutes left, but you talk in our panel, you talked a lot about the publishing end of it, like what decisions you made about how to publish it and do it yourself, and you experimented, probably had a spreadsheet, if I had to guess, about how to publish. Can you briefly touch on that?
Yeah, I think that, on one end of the spectrum is kind of a traditional publishing situation where you don't take on, you as the author, don't take on any of the risk. You're not paying for anything. The publisher is doing that, but then also you're getting at the end of the day about 8% of every book sale, which is can be pretty tiny for the amount of work that you put into creating a book. And fortunately, I guess it seems scary at first. This is a giant book, 368 pages, tons, almost 1,000 color photographs. So finding a publisher to agree to front the money for that was going to be an uphill battle, especially I'd never written a book before. And so another option available to me was either to self-publish, I didn't know how to do that, or to do something called hybrid publishing, which is basically I hire a publisher and the designer and the photographer. I pay for the printing. I'm taking on all the risk of the book, but then I'm not paying commission to anybody after I pay their initial, fees. Mm-hmm. And so now when I sell a book, it's worked out well for me because the King Cake book is sold. Now we're up to, between the two King Cake books, they've sold more than 23,000 copies.
Fantastic.
And so, yeah, it's amazing. I printed 5,000 books thinking, oh yeah, maybe it'll take me 5 years to sell through that. And we sold through 5,000 books in like the first 5 weeks. And so that was unbelievable.
That's strong. That's really,
Yeah.
those are strong numbers.
And then you
Yeah.
developed the children's book.
Yeah. So I long before kind of when I got off the Appalachian Trail, I was not an established writer, and I needed to make money somehow. And I saw I could teach creative writing to third graders, and I was like, oh, that sounds kind of fun. And so I have been doing that for years, and I still do. It's a fun way. Their school's right down the street for me, and there's these third graders. I thought they're gonna love this. I'm gonna bring the Big Book of King Cake to them. And they're going to be like, holy cow, Mr. Matt is the coolest teacher we've ever had. He is a published author. What a guy. But I forgot that third graders are very mean. And so one of them was like, why would you write a whole book about king cake? And I thought that was a little rude, but I try not to let my feelings get hurt. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe this is a result of them taking kind of for granted the things that are always in front of them. And I thought maybe an interesting kids book would be around what makes king cake special. And so, real quick, it's the story of Miley. It's the little book of king cakes, the story of Miley. She's a third grader and she gets the king cake baby at school. So she has to bring the next king cake. But there are so many kinds, she cannot figure out which one to bring. And it really stresses her out. So in her dreams, she dreams about the king cake baby and this problem. The king cake baby gets real big and flies her around to 7 real New Orleans bakeries. And at each bakery in her dreams, the king cake is real big and kind of teaches her what makes them special, whether it's the tradition of king cake or the history of king cake or the special ingredients inside the creativity of the bakers and things like that. So It's been a fun story. Yeah.
Excellent.
Thank you.
So, Sherri, tell us what you're going to be doing this week. What does it look like at Paul's Bakery the week before Mardi Gras?
Well, my first job is to make sure we have enough cream cheese in the building and flour and eggs and everything else to make all the king cakes we need to make in the next 9 days or so.
I bet your cream cheese supplier loves you a lot.
Well, we'll go through about 30,000 pounds of just cream cheese. We get it in 30-pound blocks. And that was another story in itself. We used to, when we first started making it, we'd go to Del Champs and get the 8-ounce little block of cream cheese. How we started, and then we started asking the suppliers about, we need cream cheese in bigger containers. They came up with 3-pound blocks, and then, before too many years later, we needed something bigger. So now they have 30-pound blocks, and so we mix all of our cream cheese from scratch at our night shift bakes all of our king cakes, mixes the cream cheese, the cinnamon filling, mixes up the red velvet and white chocolate chips, and everything for all the different flavors that we make. But yeah, they keep in touch with me even on Sundays about the supplies and stuff. We're pretty much in touch with each other every day.
So, are you still shipping this week? What is your shipping cutoff for Mardi Gras?
Yes, we are still shipping. As of today, about 1 o'clock, you can still order a king cake to ship out tomorrow to arrive on Thursday. And then we also will be taking orders to ship out on Wednesday to arrive Friday. And then we will also do next day air packages to ship out on Saturday to arrive on the Monday before Mardi Gras, and then Monday for Tuesday delivery for Mardi Gras Day. Those are all overnight packages on those days, but everybody still has time to get their orders in. And like I said, we have a lot of schools that ask us about doing fundraisers after Mardi Gras as well. So we do have a lot of schools that will do fundraisers after Mardi Gras if they want to be looking for Easter or, something at a different time of the year or with their school colors.
Wow. That's a good idea.
We've had a lot of fun doing that with them as well, and they make a good bit of money with it, too.
Yeah.
Fantastic idea. Now, Malcolm and I are eating the red velvet and the pecan praline, and I have to admit I've had 2 pieces
Oh, that's
of
all
the
right.
pecan breakfast. But would you tell us, what are your top 5?
The top 5 probably would be we have our own cinnamon cream filling that we make, and that one's, of course, popular because people like the cinnamon. But then the cream cheese, strawberry cream cheese, a berry deluxe that we make that has a cream cheese with blueberry, strawberry, and raspberry, a third of each flavor in the cake. And then the pecan praline is one of our top 5.
I bet it is. Matt, tell our listeners how they can find you and follow you and keep up with you and all the work that you're doing.
Yeah, sure. So if you want to purchase a copy of either book, you can go to www.thebigbookofkingcake.com. And if you'd like, I could personalize the book. There's kind of a field for you to mention if you want the book personalized or signed or whatever, and then I can ship that over to you. If you want to follow me on social media.
I'm going to be the next customer. I'm going to go to that site. I want one personalized from you.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate that a lot.
This sounds so wonderful.
Yeah, it's terrific.
Thank you. And if you want to follow me on social media, at the Big Book of King Cake, or at the Big Book of Po' Boy, or at Matt Haines, Haines Writes, WRITES. Matt Haines Writes is those are my kind of three things on Instagram, and so you can follow me there as well.
Okay, Sherri, what are your social media places?
Well, it's just paulspastry.com. Takes you right to our website. And from the website, you can actually go to the Facebook page or just follow us like our Facebook page at paulspastry.com. That's it.
All right. In closing, I'm going to ask you both a quick question. Sherri, what is the shelf life of a king cake?
Okay.
Got to go quick.
That's a question. Okay. You can go for 3 or 4 days unrefrigerated. You can freeze them up to 3 months.
All right. And Matt, what Mardi Gras parades are you attending this week?
So I'm going to Texas this weekend for some king cake events. So I'm going to miss the weekend ones, which I love. So I am ready to rock on Muses on Thursday night, and then Monday night and Tuesday all day. My events are done. I'm ready to party. So
Right on. Thank you both so much. Deep South Dining is a production of Mississippi Public Broadcasting's Think Radio, and we are funded by generous contributions from folks like yourself, and we thank you. Our show is produced by Marissa Vaughn. For our special guests, Matt Haines, Sherri, Paul, Thigpen, and of course my co-host, Carol Palmer, I'm Malcolm White, saying please stay tuned now for Marshall Ramsey's program. It's a President's Day program. It says here, I'm not sure which it is, but I think I see Marshall. We'll see you next week.